Hello and good afternoon, everyone. I'm Wes from 3T5 Fund, and welcome to our panel discussion for this year's Philippine Startup Week. Today, we'll be talking about the best ways to scale and fundraise for a startup. Those in our audience today may find themselves at different stages of their founder's journey. You may be just starting out, maybe you're still trying to prove product market fit, maybe you're looking to grow the traction you've made in recent months, or maybe you're already an established business with thousands of customers. In any case, we hope this talk will enlighten you on the best ways to meet the demands of aggressively growing your startup. And I'm so excited to get things underway. But first, I'd like to introduce what 3T5 Fund is all about and why we do what we do. We invest in crazy early stage founders and believe that the next 10 years will fundamentally shift the Philippine and Southeast Asian economy towards becoming more driven by technology. Established by PayMongo founders Francis Plaza and Luis Sia, our goal is to support those that have the capability to provide the infrastructure needed to lift up struggling economies and accelerate their growth. Our mission is to fund promising companies that will help enable the rapid creation of new opportunities and wealth like never before. And to aid in the overall development of the Philippine startup ecosystem, we also set up talks to help founders gain insights and tips from experienced startup professionals from all industries, just like this one. So without further ado, let's get started with our talk on scaling and fundraising. Let's welcome our host and co-founder of GT5 Fund and PayMongo, Luis Sia.
Hi
Today,
guys.
Today, he'll be joined by three esteemed guests, all co-founders and CEOs of their respective companies. Let's also give a warm welcome to Ariane Lim from AcadArena, Josh Supan from Shipmates, and last but not the least, the Dexter Ligot-Gordon from Swarm.
Hello everyone. Awesome. So I guess it's
Cool.
us. Thanks for the intro, Wes. Is it me or do we have an echo here? All right, I think we're good. So hey guys, Ariane, Dexter, Josh, thank you for being here. So super honored to be with what in my view are the best founders in the country right now. You guys are doing super interesting things. But in my interactions with you guys over the past year and month, super willing to pay it forward, and I super appreciate that. So thank you for being here today. So yeah, today I think we're going to talk about fundraising and scaling. I'm just going to ask you guys some questions, rapid fire, and I think it's something that people love to talk about, right? But it's in my view sort of like mystical, right? Fundraising, and it's really something that you sort of learn by experience. And given that you guys had pretty great year, I think you guys all raised your respective rounds this year, whether that's pre-seed or seed. I think you guys are like the perfect panel to shed some light on some of these topics, right? So yeah, I guess let's get started then. I think before we delve right into it, maybe you guys can introduce your startups to everyone who's listening here, and maybe a bit of how your journey began and how you got to where the company is today. I'm thinking maybe Dexter, you can start being the veteran in the room.
Did you mean the oldest? Is that what you're going to say?
You always throw this on me.
I know. Well, because you guys remind me how old I am. So I'm just embracing it. So hello, everyone. Hello, mabuhay. I'm Dexter. I am Filipino in spite all appearances. And actually, my journey becoming a founder really just started because I was passionate about connecting people with work. 2012, I actually left my career in San Francisco and moved to the Philippines to team up with Paul Rivera to co-found Caliber. And back then, what we were really focused on doing was connecting Filipinos with local employment opportunities so they don't have to leave the country. And with the whole pandemic last year, what we realized is that the world built the infrastructure to work remotely. So that way the need to move isn't even a factor anymore because opportunities can be connected with talent no matter where the talent is. So that was the premise for our current company, Swarm. So we enable founders to connect with product builders, so product managers, designers, and engineers, and we do so remotely. The talent here in the Philippines is crazy. It's amazing, and it's actually not the only market we're going to be in, but it's the market that we wanted to start in because the talent here is just amazing. As many of you all know that who are starting startups here is just a treasure trove of design and development talent. So that's my quick journey.
Thanks, Dex. Maybe Josh, could go next.
Sure. Hey everybody, my name is Josh. I'm CEO of Shipmates. Me and my co-founder David started by being an e-commerce enabler here in 2017. The reason why we pivoted from being a whole e-commerce enabler is because building websites is a thankless job, to say the least. So when we saw that the biggest problem was not really getting online, it was really shipping stuff from point A to point B.
Mm-hmm.
We decided to pivot to just building a solution for the online sellers to connect with couriers automatically. So what we did is Shipmates is a courier platform that connects your online business to any courier here in the Philippines. So it's like an automated experience for the whole of shipping. We're still in beta right now. We've been in beta since August, but in terms of fundraising, we just closed our seed round at 1.5 million. So we're very excited about that. So
Congratulations, man.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a little bit about who we are.
Awesome. Ariane?
Yeah. So, hi, I'm Marion Lim. I'm the co-founder and co-CEO of AcadArena. So, AcadArena is a place where students get to play, connect, and earn. We like the simple version is people see us as the esports or video games UAAP, but we actually do so much more than that because it's not enough for you to engage or have like a meaningful engagement with students if you just do tournaments week on week. We have several products for all types of student gamers, the creators, student leaders, coaches, managers, etc. You name it, from enrollment to graduation. So we use video games and esports and now crypto to solve student problems and uplift their quality of life. The thing is, we started as a gig on 2019. It was like a weekend gig that I juggled on the side. I had like a full-time job with Chinese bosses, which just destroyed my sleep schedule. And when we saw that nobody does the way things that we do, like it just slowly became apparent, and it hit us that our team, our co-founders, we've become the subject matter experts for the specific market that we're in, which is youth esports. That's when I just decided to go all in. Like I quit my job, did it full time, even like with a cut of my salary compared to corporate. And we're now a tech startup in 2 years.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I mean, it's been amazing talking with you guys over the past year, because I think like even before all of you guys were racing rounds, like, you know, I've seen sort of like how your idea grew into like, you know, what it is today. And I think like it's been like a crazy year. I think you can all agree on that one. But yeah, I guess like, you know, like, I guess on the first topic, which is on scaling, right? You know, everyone here is sort of like venture backed. And so, you know, there's a unique pressure from investors to sort of grow your business, you know, really fast, right? I guess like, you know, my first question to you guys would be, what do you think about when, you know, you think about, you know, the term scaling your business or showing growth to investors? Maybe this time we could start with Ariane.
We're definitely the type of founders that had to get to that point where we know our numbers are way up there compared to anybody else in this space,
Yeah.
whether in the country or regionally. We know there's like startups that can pitch and get millions of dollars with just a concept. That's like mind blowing for us. And you have to do something. You have to do it based on what's comfortable with your co-founders too.
Right.
So,
And
when it
I
comes
think what's super interesting, Ariane, is that you guys started as a like a profitable business, right? Before even realizing you're a tech business. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So I guess like how did it, you know, like form from there? So you were saying.
Well, there are times in your whole fundraising process where your business model can change. It kind of happened overnight for us, where we decided to add a flywheel when the crypto space,
Mm,
the whole Web3 metaverse was
got
hitting this peak. There was a week where I was mentioning how Facebook is definitely gonna go build the metaverse before they even rebranded to Meta, and that happened during like our fundraising process,
yeah.
and it kind of went crazy. That's where it exactly went crazy because our investors suddenly saw what we were talking about and wanted in what we did.
Awesome, awesome, and congrats on all the progress so far. Really worked out for you guys so quick. Yeah. Maybe Josh.
Yeah.
Or-
On the scaling part, so well, AcadArena and us, we just got out of our accelerator. So we got the chance to talk to other startups from other countries, got to talk to VCs from other countries, and what you can see that if you can compare it to the Philippines, like startups in other countries, they have the luxury to build whatever they have so far. So I remember a time where our accelerator was that iterative was telling us that just put it out there, just whatever you have,
Mm,
just put it out there, and then the market will react a certain way, and you pivot from there. I don't think, well, from where we stand, and you know how we do stuff. I don't think we have the luxury to do that in the Philippines, where
mm,
you can't just build
interesting.
one thing and then the market will accept you. I don't think Filipinos, the Filipino market can, grasp the fact that, okay, you're a startup, and even if you say you're beta, they require a certain level of polish. It
Hmm.
has to work at the baseline, something like
Yeah.
that. So that's one thing I think that's the hardest part when you think about scaling. That's that first mark where you have a little bit of polish. You know what you're gonna, kind of what you're gonna do, kind of, and then you put it out
Right.
there with a little bit of polish, and then you adjust, when you get product market fit. But yeah,
So
that's
yeah,
just one of the
essentially
comparisons that
like
we see so
finding
far.
value from like an MVP that where you can really provide some level of value, right? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Yeah. Cool. And Dex.
So this is an interesting question, and I 100% empathize with the pain of facing um, high expectations from the beginning. I think that a couple of practical things, advice that I got just from my current set of like investors. One of which actually led small medium advertising at Facebook and at Google. And he walked me through this scenario where they launched the SMB advertising product at Facebook, and they got a lot of they already had distribution, and they grew really fast. But they were optimizing for the growth curve and not for the retention, right? So what they quickly realized is that because they weren't delivering value, their entire launch cohort churned. And it's really expensive to get a churned customer back, especially when you've done that. So what I see is that you want to be able to, one, not take institutional money that is going to expect you to grow until
Mm,
you're ready to grow. Okay, because the moment you take that money, you're on the launch pad. Okay, so if you need to still figure out your core flows, if you still need to understand, well, certainly what your product market fit, and I think most importantly, you have to have a really strong concept of who your target customer is and what their pain points are, right? Because in the early days, you'll be presented with a lot of different opportunities, right? You have to hone in on, this is just my view, one customer type first,
mhm.
know what their pain is, get evidence that you're solving that pain before you start to grow. That's, I think, that's at least the minimum viable kind of evidence to be able to invest the money in growth. And just having done this a few times before, when you're not clear about and decided on who that first customer is, 5 or 6 types will show up, and then you're going to have to split your attention and build a product that's speaking to a lot of different customers. And that's the quickest way to go very shallow and not be able to get depth. And it's going to create a leaky bucket once you start to invest the money to grow. So I think just to sum, knowing who your target is, what their pain is, and get evidence that you're solving that pain is the minimum kind of benchmark to hit before you start to grow. And then that's when I would start to talk to investors who can help you grow, but also would expect that you would, month on month, grow on your core KPI.
No, that's super interesting, Dex. And I think that's like similar to what Ariane and Josh said, and to some extent, right? You need to, instead of thinking about how to scale your company or like growth from the very start, you need to think about sort of like how to provide value to a small subset of customers, or get to this idea of like a product market fit, right? So maybe I just want to throw the question out there for you guys. Like, how do you know when you've sort of achieved that, right? Like sort of that it sort of worked to an extent that you are ready to sort of scale, right? Or do you sort of measure it in a way, or do you guys have a more like qualitative view on achieving some sort of product market fit, even for a small subset of users?
I'll answer. First.
Go ahead.
For us, we definitely gather the data. We kind of regret not gathering it properly or more extensively from the beginning. So for other founders out there, it's very important. We saw when we started doing it properly, we saw how a student who may have started doing a weekly tournament on August has joined the bigger leagues and got picked up by a school team on October. We saw how that same guy suddenly got interested in shoutcasting on November and attended one of our workshops. And seeing that user journey and how they jump from one product or another for us is very important, because that's our motto is not just play. We want to turn gamers into leaders, breadwinners into champions. So that's when we know our product, our thesis, our ecosystem was working out.
I guess for us, so we deal with a lot of e-commerce sellers, right? So other e-commerce businesses. For me, how I define how and our team and shipmates know that we have product market fit is if the other online businesses share us to the other people that they know. So if we achieve some level of, if we don't need a sales team to create sales, or it just happens organically, then we know that we've achieved product market fit at a certain extent. We're definitely not super there yet. Like, we're still building our way towards that. But
it's not really like a binary thing where it's either you got it or you didn't, right? Yeah.
Exactly. I don't think you can get it 100% at the very start also. But that's how we think about it, right? If other people sell us to other people, then I think we achieved it a bit.
Awesome.
I think I'm students of Josh and Ariane. I really like how Ariane, that pathway to becoming a champion, and Josh is kind of the pathway to be your customers becoming your advocates. I think is really really insightful, in terms of knowing whether or not you're striking a chord. I think product market fit for the companies and products that I've been involved with, our approach towards it is, if you understand what problem, or I'm sorry, the definition of success is for your specific customer, once you have first repeatable success and then consistent success, that'll help you understand what does the happy path towards success looks like, right? So for example, with Swarm, when we had a successful match and a contract established between a customer and a set of consultants, we'll start to attribute, well, how did the consultants hear about it? What drew them to the project? What convinced the client that this was the right consultant for them? So establish success first, and I put that kind of at the core of the concentric circles, and then you can start to path out what led to that success. So achieve that kind of customer success first. Try to make it repeatable, even if it's not consistent. And then once you're able to get it a consistent repetition of success, then you're ready to scale, right? Then you can figure out how to scale. Don't try to solve the scale problem first, because the problem set that you would have to solve to scale is very different. If you're trying to use scaling problems or scaling solutions to solve a customer problem, it's going to fail on both ends. You're just going to create you're going to scale your failure, right? So the pathway for me is identify what the story of success looks like, make it repeatable, consistent, then you can scale.
Got it. Yeah, no, that's really interesting, Dex. Because like what you said there was really focused on like, trying to get insight out of like your first few customers, right? And like it's quite interesting because in an early stage startup, there's this I guess like it's not really sure whether you're thinking about products on like what Ariane's focus is, which was really focused on data, or sort of more like an art, right? It's an art or a science, which is like figuring out like how to iterate on your first few products, right? Or first few releases. Like, how do you guys, think about that? Like, sort of, using your intuition or product intuition, and also sort of relying on like data, especially at the very early stages. I guess like personally for us, like like what Ariane said, in an early stage startup, you rarely have good infrastructure to have good data. So we really did try to rely on like some sort of, like whatever product intuition that we did have. Not sure if we could have done it a bit better, but yeah, how do you guys weigh between that? Like sort of, using intuition and trying to get insight on designing a product versus like trying to get all of like these qualitative metrics into the picture. Yeah. Anyone have thoughts on that?
Well, is cooking science or art? It's both, no? And if you want to make
Good
good
point.
food, you have to have and I know about food, as you can see. You have to have intuition, you have to have science, and you have to have a sense of quality, right? So I think that I like what Ariane said earlier, which is start with your founder strengths and your founder's comfort zone. Like when we formed Swarm, Aaron's my chief technology officer, and Alexis is our chief design officer. And Alexis just has a massive fan base for design. Aaron's a really kind of deep thinker in terms of tech. So we approached the problem with our initial skill sets, right? Qualitative information is data. Let's say this is important, especially before you have like, enough throughput to have a random, like sample, like a large enough sample size. Qualitative data is the most important kind of data early on that you'll need to get. So being disciplined and having consistent frameworks for doing customer interviews is critical at the beginning part. Creating a discipline for testing and iterating is important. And I think that the most important part is to understand, again, what is the client's or the customer's or the user's problem? Can you get them to say whether or not your solution is solving that, and then to analyze what the gap is, right? So it is both. You should have quantitative as early as you can get it. Also having a discipline around customer interviews and experimentation is important in the beginning.
Yeah, for sure. I think just to jump in, I agree with Dexter completely. In our case, well, we handle packages, right? So with anything shipped online, it's different. Like, it's food, it's big packages, it's insulated courier. So there's a lot of different requirements per vendor, per shipper. So if we relied on data alone, then we'd be forced to build multiple things for multiple people. And at the level we're at, or at the level a lot of people are at, you can't serve multiple masters, right? You have to be aware of what can my team do, what can we do right now, to not compromise the big picture here. Like, we're still trying to solve shipping, but how do we because if you try to do everything for everybody, you're gonna get lost, and you might build stuff that don't complement each other, or it'll be hard to grow or build upon. So yeah, for sure, yeah, you need the data set and stuff, but you have to feel also what you can do as a startup.
For us, well, intuition is just another kind of intelligence that's a bit more difficult to gauge. I guess we're kind of lucky because when Justin and I started AcadArena, we did absolutely everything. We were five people at once. I had to do marketing. I did the posters. I went to Marshall in those internet cafes back then. I did that even if I was like technically the boss.
Right.
And because we've done the dirty work, it's less intuition but more of experience that we get to tell our teammates now, I did what you're doing right now, but with less tech.
Right.
So it's a lot about that perspective really that we can share. There are founders out there that never did a day's work on that specific thing that they're building.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that works out, but there's just that stark difference on how you can also mentor your team.
Got it. It's just really like a really close understanding of sort of like your users, and I guess like tying together what Josh and Dex said, sort of having clear frameworks around that, sort of how you think about gathering all of these insights, right? So yeah, thanks guys for sharing all of those stuff. Yeah, I want to like shift gears a bit, right? So I think like what I got from like the first part about scaling is that especially at an early stage, it's super important that you're able to unlock value before you even think about like this crazy sort of scale, right? Or like going to like a growth stage, or thinking about large scaling problems. So I guess like I'd love to use that as a as a part to jump off to this discussion on like fundraising, right? Which I think to a lot of people watching today probably is something that they read about a lot, see on Twitter, read news about. But from my experience when I was starting out, starting my own companies and all, it was always like sort of a mystery. Like, how does this thing really work? Where does the money come from? How does the process do? You could read all you can about it, but at the end of the day, it's something that you learn when you do it. And all of three of you guys, are just fresh from from doing that yourselves. So I'd love to ask you guys a bit of questions for for the folks listening in today, right? So I guess like jumping off on unlocking value, which I think was like the theme of the first part of our conversation. When do you guys advise founders to sort of bootstrap, or and when do you think it's right for them to actually actively seek funding? Anyone can take that first.
So for in our experience, we did both, right? Our first startup we never raised money for. Like we were hard-headed about it, where because we didn't know anything about it. This is 2017. We didn't know anything about it. To be
And things
fair,
have changed.
there's not a lot of people you can talk to also at the time.
Yeah.
It's definitely a different market now. So I don't think I'm the best person to answer this question, but just to share a little bit of our experience, right? At our very first startup, we decided to just bootstrap that for 2 years, 3 years,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
eventually we got to a point that okay, we were profitable, we could pay ourselves a little bit, and we kind of settled on that, and that was our mistake. That's why when we started Shipmates, we were like, let's just raise money right away, even if you don't have a product, even if it's just a concept, let's try to raise money off that. So, I don't think there's. I think my philosophy right now is if you can, just raise. If you can, because bootstrapping is just it's gonna make stuff like 100% harder. Like if compared to raising money. I mean, you guys in PayMongo know this is the best, right? Like I'm not the best to talk about this, but definitely, like if you can, just fundraise if you can.
Cool. Well, does anyone share similar views? Or
Well, for us, because we started as an events company and we do live streams when the pandemic hit. So we were very brand sponsorship and whitelist dependent for a time. So we decided to bootstrap until we get to the point where the brands have us in their annual budget portfolios. That there's like a small tag says that's here AcadArena, and just slowly grow that, and it will just slowly add up in your finances. That there's these brand deals that you can secure year on year, like as you grow. So like until then, I'm Filipino Chinese, so I'm not comfortable with spending. That's something I share with my co-founder. We're a bit kuripot. And we get to. It's a trade-off, right? If you're kuripot, that means you gotta do the extra work, and we
Right.
did the extra work. Yeah.
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 I think that fundraising is a tool, right? It's not the goal. And I think that's one of the things that when it becomes the goal, it's a dangerous thing. When your customer is your investor and you're building a business because of a specific investor or you're making decisions, it's probably it's going to be very difficult to build a business that way unless you're a very, very, very seasoned entrepreneur. So I think like bootstrap for as long as it makes sense, because every business has different capital requirements. I think that they're like investors and angels in the current global climate, they're actually investing earlier and earlier in the entrepreneurial journey. So when you're in the early stages, there is appetite for people for investors who want to make big bets on just the founder. So if you need, say, some funding to kickstart your tech, to get a proof of concept together, it's something that you don't have the skill set for, but you have subject matter expertise, and yeah, it makes sense to raise a little bit of money. Okay, and then the expectations for those kinds of investors are not necessarily the rocket ship. They expect you to experiment, right? So I think what you want to do is make sure that you're finding and aligning with the right kind of investors who have the right reciprocal expectations of where you are in your journey. So like, for example, there's I'm a part of On Deck, and they just launched ODX. They're willing to invest in founders before they are settled on their idea, before they even left their previous job. So which is wow, okay. So it's it's the current climate. I think that know what your capital needs are, know how you're going to deploy it, and if you do need capital to either build or to grow or to get a little bit more traction, that makes sense. So it's a very difficult thing to say, because every business has different capital requirements.
Right. Yeah, no, I super love what you said, Dex, about aligning with the right investors and partners, right? You need to be like, have the same expectations. I must say though that I relate a lot with Ariane here, because like I come from like a very like Asian traditional background. So when we started fundraising, I was like, holy shit, like essence was sure, but like like what do I do with it? But what do I do with this money? Like, is it safe or whatnot? I remember very vividly. I was in YC, and we were sharing that concern, like whether we should take money or not. And they were telling us like, hey, are these your investors? Like if you lose this money, like it's gonna be nothing for them. Like they just want bigger boats, right? That's not true for every investor, but a lot of like the early stage pre-seed investors, I think acknowledge the risk, right? And if I could share from my experience, adding on to what you guys said, I think it's just really important to get yourself out there and like talk to people, right? So that you sort of get a temperature check on what investors are thinking, and what their appetite are for these types of things. So yeah, thanks for sharing, guys. I guess I like moving on from that question. I think one thing that a lot of people often ask is, like, so I have a great idea. I'm working on something that I think is really exciting. But there are many folks in the startup community who you really just don't know where to start, right? In terms of raising cash or to grow their business, right? In your experiences, and everyone's had like a first time ever getting their check. How did it work out for you guys, and what do you guys suggest for like first time founders who are sort of figuring out like how to fundraise or get their first check, right?
First check is definitely the first check is definitely the hardest. So in our experience,
First check is the hardest. Yeah.
It's the hardest. Yeah. I remember talking to you in July, right? July.
Yeah, I know.
That was fresh off us not making it to YC. And
right.
I remember that my co-founder David, like it was a big deal for us. Like we really wanted to get into YC, but we didn't have the traction for it or whatever. So I remember he blogged about it a bit. So he was like, hey, something we really wanted and it happened, and we're kind of lost of what to do. And then a bunch of, even if we didn't make it to YC, a bunch of seed investors reached out to us and they were like, "Hey, we still like what you're doing. Are you looking for investments?" And then it was more of, we turned a bad thing into a good thing. And honestly, like, I don't want to say that we had like a plan for it or whatever. We were honestly just lucky. And on my end, I don't know if I should say this, but
Go ahead.
I automatically did the whole FOMO thing. Like, even if it's a small check, like a tiny check, I would go to the next investor and say, "Hey, I got it from this guy. I got invested from this guy." And then our biggest angel investor, just because I was rolling the FOMO, I got to a point where somebody was willing to give like a 1 million check.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I was like, okay, so I don't think there's a science there, but definitely, I think there's also a value in. I think I learned this from my co-founder. There's value in building in public. When he became more active because my co-founder is a very shy person before, but he started being more active and writing and tweeting and just bringing himself out there, and that's when it changed for us. Honestly, that's when it changed for us. And my job there was just scrape that little FOMO whenever we got the first check. So I was rolling until I got to a point where this is really tiring. Honestly, it's really tiring, but yeah, for sure, it's definitely worth it.
Awesome. So putting yourself out there and noted that David is not shy anymore. Cool. Well, how about for you guys? Any experiences that you guys want to share on your first fundraising journeys? I know Dex always likes to give us stuff for having this easy fundraise, but yeah, I mean, maybe you could share how it was back in the day.
Back in the day in 2012. So are we going to all talk about what grades we were in 2012?
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll stop.
So 2012 was okay. So it was kind of like the start of that wave of the tech ecosystem. Probably the biggest kind of success story was when OLX bought Sulit back in the day. So that's kind of the big tech story. And a lot of the people at Sulit, they're like, I really respect what they've done in training kind of our generation of entrepreneurs. So there was Kickstart and Ideaspace, both of which were founded around the same time that Caliber was founded. And then when we actually applied to YC, there was the first year that they had accepted international applicants, right?
Yeah.
So the challenge, I think that what I hate you guys for is that you're starting to raise funds, and it's capital's global now, right? Specifically, VC is global now for tech. And as Josh said, fundraising is a very FOMO-driven, namely, it's a competitive. Their competitive tendencies. So when there's more competition for investors, then they get more aggressive. They give better terms. They try to essentially create a value proposition to founders why they should work, why they should let them invest in your company. That my pronouns messed up. So I think that back then there just wasn't that competition. Kickstart was great. They were our second check in. They sought us out because there were just very few startups. But even though Ideaspace was their competitor, Ideaspace was really helpful towards us in making connections to other folks. When we got into Y Combinator, what the challenge with Y Combinator is that most of the investors were just really focused on the U.S. market because the U.S. market was big enough, right? So it was difficult for us to make headway there. Kind of maybe. Rather than the history lesson, what we're doing this time around, I think, is one thing to note, especially in the current environment. Most investors, it's very referral driven. So once you get kind of like the first introduction, there's a really interesting hook that David's blog post. I read that blog post when you talked
I did
about
also. Yeah.
Getting rejected from YC, that building in public and kind of just being open, I think perhaps gets you your first set of introductions. and then leverage that and kind of when somebody invests or like their time in you, ask them for an introduction, right? Ask them for who else I should talk to. And typically, you could get that introduction, right? Especially if they pass, if it's, if they say, oh, this is not, I like your idea. Here's the thing to listen for. I like your idea and I like you, but this is not a fit for what my portfolio is. What you should do, what you should do is ask, who should I talk to? That's actually those are the best contacts. Those are the ones who will introduce you to the folks who would be a good fit. And, so that's one technique. FOMO is another technique. So trying to get terms on the table at the same time so that they're competing. And the third bit of advice is, if you are raising money from, if you're asking someone for an introduction, try not to do that from people who are interested in investing themselves. Okay, and the reason why is because whoever they introduce you to, their investment will become contingent on the referrer's investment, and you don't want to create those contingencies. You want to create competition and not kind of consolidation. So it all starts with having a great vision, a plan of attack, and then fundraising is kind of more the tactical element of building support and supplies for what you need to accomplish.
No, I think Josh and Dexter really just hit it quite well. I have very similar experiences with both of them. So I guess I'll just frame it a bit differently, because some people think fundraising is a totally new science you have to learn from scratch, when really it feels like, in the early stages, it feels like dating that will turn into a thesis defense. That's what it feels like. And in either case, right, whether a partner or a thesis advisor, you need to find people who will fit you. So +1 on putting yourself out there, like what Josh said. You won't get to meet people who fit you if you don't put yourself out there to actually meet them, pakapalan ng mukha to reach out and everything. You don't know what will work. And be on the lookout for the newest funds that come out as well. The space is really hot right now because, well, in a post-pandemic world, businesses are now different. So VC money is also hot and ready there. And with what Dexter said, just remember your energy, integrity, and reputation in these dates or defenses is the best marketing or referral. Always carry yourself with grace and kindness on whatever you do.
So fundraising is like dating, basically, and putting yourself out there. Super helpful advice, guys. And I think what you guys said were really realistic accounts of how it's really like to fundraise. Hopefully that gives an idea to folks who are new to it, and who will eventually do it in the future. Interesting thing actually, on the history lesson, Dex, I was in YC, and I think after Caliber, we had been the second Philippine based startup to get in, right? And the thing that we were most worried about, and this was just in early 2019, was would anyone fund a Philippine based business? You're worried about the TAM, right? And so more than selling the idea, which was something that most people knew about, we were building something like Stripe. We were selling the Philippines, really. And I think it's been on a personal level, it's just been amazing to see how so much of this venture capital has opened up to the Philippines. Now it's clear that the Philippines isn't on the map, and accelerators like Iterative, or which Josh came in, or YC. There's so much interest now in the Philippines, and I think we're lucky in that way to have that today, right? Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. Can I just add one thing?
Yeah. Go.
So we just got out of closing a round, right? So it's fresh in my head where an investor told me that I'm not sure about the Philippines so much. It's a big time investor. He was telling me I'm not sure about the Philippines because in their portfolio they usually other Southeast Asian countries, they talk to 1,000 startups a year, but in the Philippines they just talk to maybe 100. That's the maximum they can talk to. And then at that moment I was like, why is it a bad thing? I mean, isn't it better if it's less startups? Because there's less bets to invest on, right? There's not a lot of people in the pie, so to speak. So yeah, just to add on there, like I'm really proud of the Philippines. Like this was around in 2017 when we started. Maybe our Lolo Dexter in 2012, it was really non-existent, but yeah, it's growing definitely here.
Yeah.
Two quick things, and I saw a question about valuation. One is actually think about what Ariane had said. I want to pick up on that, which is know who you are and define your values. You're actually the care that you put into hiring your first employees in terms of defining values and culture and alignment. You should apply also to investors, right? And there is enough kind of variety and diversity now that you can actually be selective in terms of which investors you want to work with, because they're going to be, your employees will come and go, but your investors are going to be on your cap table until you're done, right? So especially if you give them influence with you, so you have to also look at it from the point of view of not just what can they do for me, but are we in alignment? Are we seeing do we care about the same things? Do we have similar values? I think they should have different perspectives and different skill sets to challenge you, but values I think should be aligned, because when the going gets tough, those values are going to see you through those rough patches. And then lastly, in terms of valuations, I think Wes is trying to figure out. I'd love to hear, Josh, how you set your early stage valuation. What I need to know, what I did was essentially I took a benchmark of what are early stage companies getting funded for in different regions, and then I kind of just picked where in the spectrum I wanted to be at early stage, because there is a market. There are market comparables for pre-seed, or in other words, pre-MVP, revenue companies, right? So I think that what I would do is just try to find your placement and your justification for that spectrum. But the market is usually the best way. So like when I was raising funds, pre-seed in Southeast Asia was going at a valuation between 4 to 7 million, depending on where in the region. So I tried to place myself within that range.
You're not gonna like my answer. You're not gonna like my answer the valuation part. So I remember talking to Suken Ariane. So I was asking him, so how does valuation work? So he's giving me the math behind it. Like if you're SaaS, it's revenue times 15. If you're, I don't know, if your logistics is 2x. If you're just playing the GMV game, it's 1.5. So he's just giving me the math. But at the end of it all, he told me that actually, dude, like valuation is how much somebody's willing to value you. And I kind of rode with that. In both a good way and a bad way. Like I've had experiences where VCs would laugh at me when I mentioned the valuation part. Like laugh at my face. I'm like, okay, cool. Others would buy into it and stuff. So I'm not sure if that adds any value, but
I used to bargain for Fabric and Divisoria. You'd be surprised how similar the bargaining techniques would be. Right? I would do things like when I would go to Divisoria, I would say, oh, how much is this? It's 100 pesos. And then I would only have but look, I only have 50 pesos in my pocket, but I'd actually have 200 pesos in the other one. No, things like that. It is bargaining. There is a concept. Don't do that with your investors. But I'm just saying there's a very similarities to bargaining when you're having that conversation. So just I did shoot our foot with one of our fundraising rounds with Caliber. So I think that now it's different because there's a lot more players and it's really hot right now, right? So it's kind of it's a founder's market in terms of setting valuations. Where when Caliber was raising one of its rounds, it wasn't hot. It wasn't founder friendly, especially in Southeast Asia. And we got pegged as being too expensive. So and then that got spread around, and nobody, we just kind of got locked out for a period of time. So I think you have to take a temperature. Right now, it's hot. You should always take a temperature of what the market's like, and then you can, use your bargaining techniques appropriate to what the market's doing.
Yeah. So I'll just add there. You're right. It's really hot. So I've talked to a lot of VCs that usually invest B, C stages for Philippine startups. Unheard of. Like, who gets to B and C? Maybe PayMongo, the first one. But like, are you waiting for B or C or D to invest? And so a lot of times, like the funds here locally, the local VCs now are turning their B funds into seed funds. And I'm like, sounds like. And what I'm also seeing is it's there. I just thought this was a thing in the States where it's pre-ID. No, pre-company. So they term their funds as pre-company. And then I've spoken to a bunch of VCs here that are now getting to that game also in the Philippines. So yeah, it's a different time. The best time to be a founder.
Yeah. Aaron, what was it like for you?
Yeah.
No, we fundraised at the time, and when crypto actually played to earn hit the Philippines. So in our temperature level, it was definitely very hot, to the point that I think our investors were even telling us that our valuation is too low and we should ramp that up because the deal does look hot. We had an oversubscription problem because of it, and we didn't know. It was absolutely the weirdest problem to ever have as first-time founders. But if fundraising is like dating, sometimes building a company is just like tadhana, and that kind of rom-com. Yeah, this happens. The time is right. It's a lot of circumstance and luck, really, and we're just at that cusp for AcadArena.
It's like, shut up and take my tokens.
I love the analogy there. Yeah, no, like that's super interesting. I guess like just sharing from my experience to like synthesizing what you guys all said. I guess it really is a dynamic thing. Like the market is always changing. When I was fundraising for seed, like the benchmarks, they've changed in only a span of like 2.5 years, right? So if anything, like if I could share, like what I really found, what fundraising really is about, or setting valuations, is being good at reading signals, and trying to really fish out those signals and sort of synthesizing them, right? So I think anyone who is good at reading signals, would sort of understand and sort of understand like how to value their companies as well. As what Josh said and Bex and Ariane said, it's really based on the market. And yeah, maybe if you want to practice, you can go to the Visoria, as you said.
See, yeah,
don't offer 50,
advice.
offer 200.
Yeah, exactly. There's Wall Street tactics and there's the Visoria tactics. That's how it works.
All right, guys. I think we're I think in onto our like last 7 minutes. So I think we can go into some Q&A from our audience. So let me pick up some questions. You guys see it too, right? Are there any questions here that you would want to answer? Yeah.
Angel investors, I'll pick that one because it is really
ahead.
quick and easy. Set your criteria. So values first, criteria second. Values is who you are. Define that first. And then criteria is what you're looking for from your investors. So we're very clear. We wanted people who had experience with the specific ops, where operational things that we needed help with that was missing from our founders. The second thing was access to early customers. And the third was reputation, who could help us introduce to investors down the line. I think one of the common techniques that you'll see, and I've seen PayMongo leverage this very well, is that they declare who their early investors are, which helps build that reputation, right? So if you can pull on like early staff at some of the big tech companies, I think that's kind of a signaling effect that you're legit, you're kind of an inheritor towards those companies. So those are my quickies.
Ariane and Josh, you guys have anything to add there?
I think just to the question was what
What
makes
I
a
think it's
quality
quality, angel
angel
investor.
investor, especially for the early stages. I'm going to answer that with this other question on what is your advice for young startups who are looking for investors funding? Since there's many different types of investors, there's many different types of investors, many types of advisors out there, and like the answer of what you're looking for is you want a variation of what they can like give you. Like each of them definitely has like their own. Like if it's an RPG, they have like different stats. They have their own specialties, right? So you definitely want all bases covered. So when you have a problem in a very specific thing, whether ops,
Mm,
marketing, or even HR, you get to ask those like specific investors or advisors there. So it's just really tempering it depending
mhm,
on who you got to meet. Sometimes you get so much ops investors, and maybe it's time to like kind of cut down on that and not include them in your cap table anymore.
mm. How about Josh? You have some thoughts on that?
Um. Okay, so I know we've been talking about like how fundraising is a dating, and you have to find the right
The
investor,
one.
the one, let's say. But just to pivot a bit from that,
Mm,
what people are telling me usually is at very early stages you don't have traction, maybe you don't have a product yet and stuff. What investors are looking for are founders. Really, it's team,
mm,
it's founders. So it's not. I don't think it's a good mindset to think, okay, what can the investor give me? What can I get from them? Yeah, it is a good mindset, but you also have to think about it in a way where, do they like me? Do they like me? Do they think I can build it for them? Do they think that am I somebody that they're willing to bet on?
yeah.
And
So a
that's
lot
what
of
it is.
trust, basically.
It's a lot of trust. Yeah. So I know a lot of startups that they have a pitch and they just go through the pitch and then they just talk about their slides and stuff. I do it a little bit differently, where I just try to talk to them. I try
Mm,
to gauge where they're at in terms of investing. I tell them a little bit about me first, and I talk about my company, and then I also, because I know they're investors, right? I know they're investors. They're in this to make money, right? Yes, they want to bet on you, but they're in this to make money. So I give them a proposition where this is where you can exit. This is where you can make money. So it's more. I give them numbers on what could potentially be, but definitely
mhm.
that's really just, hey, do you like me enough? Do you bet on me? And the whole pitching process is more of like, yeah, it's just me proving myself to them. You know what I mean? So yeah.
Yeah, Josh, I love that. I think like in early stages, it really boils down to trust. Given that they're placing a lot of money into something that might not be as proven yet, right? So I love that point, and I think that's a great way to wrap this up. But before everything, I want to thank you guys again for being here. I love talking to you guys all the time. But I guess before I close, I just want to give you guys a chance to do your own shout outs, if any, or plugs, hiring, or to check out your products. Yeah, anyone want to start?
Yeah, check us out at swarm.work, SWARM.WORK, and just follow us on our socials. Love to have you a part of our community. It's really cool to be here.
Yeah, for us, it's shipmates.app. If you see a purple astronaut, that's it. So, if you're selling something online and looking to make logistics easier, please check us out.
Yeah, check us out at AcadArena.com. If you see a torch with a blue flame, that's us. If you're a student, a gamer, a teacher, or a parent, we have a lot that we can work out for you. Check us out. We have scholarships every month, just because you're a student gamer who can balance their studies.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks, guys. I'll do my own shout out. So do check out PayMongo. But we're also very keen on supporting Philippine Startup Week. So, check out paymongo.com/PHSW, PHSW 2021, to join our booth among other stuff that we're doing for Philippine Startup Week. So, yeah, thanks, guys, for joining today. This is a great chat, and hope everyone learned something. I definitely
Yeah.
enjoyed. Yeah.
Yeah. Same here. It was awesome.
Bye.
Thanks,
Thanks for
guys.
having us.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.